Good morning, and today's going to be Jack 10 of spades. We are on the button. Folds around us. We open raise. Button open raising range, very large, and we get called by the big blind. We know nothing about him. This is his first hand at the table. So I'm just going to give him kind of a standard big blind calling range, kind of what I see. Suited aces, suited kings, broadways, pocket pairs. If he didn't raise, and sometimes they raise, sometimes they don't. It's probably going to be better if we just go ahead and include in like the aces, kings, queens, even though those usually raise here. Actually, let's just take them out. Say queens plus ace queen, queens plus ace king. We'll make it a little bit better, a little bit more realistic, you could say. So we go to flop. Flop is 8-7-5 with 2 clubs. So we flop the gut shot. That's about it. We assume he's going to be checking, which I think most out of position players check. And this isn't really a donking flop. So he checks. It's on us. We've got a massive range. We're not going to be betting 100% here. We're not going to be betting anywhere close to 100%. Because if we check out flop, you can see that, yeah, our range is a little ahead here, but not across the entire board. We have a lot of hands we have to get rid of. So let's see what we can do. If we do overpair plus, we do just overpair plus, that's just under 10%. If we add in flush draw, open ender, that gets us to 20% there. We could include a gut shot, 2-card gut shot. I don't think I'm going to include like a 1-card gut shot. That's going to add too much. That gets us to 40. Well, I mean, I guess 40. We have 20%. That's a 60% c-bet range. This right here, if we just do a 2-card gut shot, we could probably add in maybe good top pair hands. No, not good top pair. I think we'd leave the ace 8, king 8 in our checking range here. Just because if an ace or a king comes out, we could conceivably have 2 pair at that point. This, we're going for a little bit of value. And also, if he folds his overcards, I guess that's okay. We fold out some of that equity. So I think it's going to probably be something like this. What do? I bet. I don't. Again, we work it out. I think this is probably okay because we've got a gut shot and we have 2 overs. Definitely would prefer if this was hearts. It gives us backdoor flush draw as well, but we've got overs and we have a gut shot. If a 9 comes, I don't think he's going to necessarily put us on the straight. So I do think the bet's okay. I bet 2/3. I'm not sure if I like this bet. I think smaller bet might be a little bit better. But yeah, it is what it is. And villain called. So at this point, I'm going to give him, I think the larger size is going to make it harder for him to call. So we'll give him flush draw, open ender. We'll give him top pair plus. We'll give him middle pair as well. Pocket pair, that's 6s. That should be in his range already. So we'll say 41% is what he has. So we move to the turn, which is a 10 of clubs. So it gives us a pair. We still have the gut shot. I don't like the club because the flush draws get there. Villain checks. Question is villain going to check everything? I do think he is. I still think he's going to be checking everything. Oops. I did not do that. So then what do we continue with? I think we continue with the flush. I think our top pair now Yeah, we're going to do nut flush draw. Let's get these. Second nut flush draw. I think here we're probably not going to be betting all of the open-enders anymore. And that kind of really reduces what our bluffing range is. So we're going to need some balance here. So that kind of means then that we're probably betting our flushes. That's 18%. But then our straights could only partially be bet. Let's say we're only betting straights like 50% of the time. That's going to mean we're going to have some straights in our bluffing range. I think the sets are probably only going to be about 50% of the time or so, maybe less. Actually, let's do less. Let's do just the 33. Actually, 25. 25% we're going to be betting there. Two pair, I think 25% we're going to be betting. I still think there's hands that he could be calling with. So I think we're probably more likely to be betting with jacks and queens, and then kings might be like 50%, and then aces might be 25% or so, something like that. Some mixed strategy here. And top pair, I do think we're probably betting this. If we get raised, we can just fold these hands. I think that's kind of what I'm thinking. So we're going to scale those down. Now we need our bluffs. We've got nut flush and everything. And I think at the flush at this point, maybe our weak pairs we're going to be betting as a bluff. Middle pairs maybe. And again, if we raise and get, if we bet and get raised, we can easily fold. So that gives us at 60%. So you can see we went from 36 up to a 60% bet. I think that's reasonable. I think that's reasonable. I think our straights are now just going to be checking. So I bet, and that's I think okay. It's still part of our 25% range. We bet villain calls, and at this point we're probably just going to check unless I think we're probably just going to be checking behind. Even if the 9 comes, I think we're probably just going to be checking behind because we've got the flush out there. Villain calls at this point. I think maybe top pair plus. Maybe I think he's going to call flush draw. And the straights now are just going to be a little bit harder for him to call. Yeah, he could call with the 9s, pair 9s. We'll give him that. 7, 8, 9. I guess we can give him the straight draws as well. Maybe he calls with those, even though a flush got there. We'll give him that. So 77%. All right, so you can see that villain should be ahead. 9 comes out. I think if it goes check, we just check behind. I think he's calling with the straight, so that's kind of would be a split. We do have the jack, which would give us the high one. So villain checks. I think he probably checks everything. Maybe he doesn't do the check straight flush. But for us, the question is, what do we continue betting with? Gosh darn it! Didn't click that again. So we have our flush. I think we continue betting our flush. Probably all of our flush, or the stronger flushes. Definitely ace high, definitely king high, probably queen high. We go for some value. I think our straight's just going to be a check, because if we bet, I kind of think he's only going to be calling like flushes and straights. I don't think he's going to call with sets or 2 pairs. So flushes go for value, straights I think we're just going to check behind and see the showdown. So I bet small. He calls. At this point, we're probably just splitting, or he beat me with the flush. So he shows 8, 9 for 2 pair, and he called 2 pair, which is a little surprising. And I took down the pot, so that's pretty cool. So let's get this note on here. That's not him. I guess I'll have to look up this hero, this villain, and kind of get it down there. So what I'm curious about is, what does GTO suggest? So let's take a look. All right, here is GTO. We did we did have villain checking 100% of the time. And here we have a check percentage of 64.8%. That gives us betting percentage of 35%, which I believe we were close. We were at 40%. Oops, here we are. We're at 35%. So we were about right on. We were betting straight sets. We're betting two pair. We're betting over pair. Some of the over. Well, that was a mess up. So I switched these two ranges. Let's go back and fix these. So in position was. Oh no, it was. We had them right. Difference was this. Had the wrong ones clicked. Alright, so let's kick done. We are going to rebuild the tree using everything, and then I'm going to import the tree, and I'm going to fix it. So I'm going to program a check-in for him, and then for me, I'm going to add two more bet sizes, so 33%, 66%. I'm contemplating making that 75%, just slightly larger. So we've got this set. We're going to accept the changes, confirm, and now when we run our solver, it should work. So I'm going to run the solver and we'll be back. All right, well, had a screw up. I already worked through the GTO and was finishing up before and then I realized I didn't even record. So I already know what we're going to say. So focus here when we look at GTO is we assume that our opponent's playing GTO too. We can deviate from GTO when villain also deviates from GTO. So if we see that players are calling too much, that means we should be betting more than what GTO recommends. If we think the villain is folding way too much, then we should adjust accordingly. So that could be meaning bluffing more to take advantage of that extra fold equity, or it could mean tightening up what we bet after he makes that initial call. So here we assume villain checks. Our play, we were kind of targeting about 35 to 40% c-bet, and that looks to be close. We're actually c-betting a little bit more. And GTO actually favors a smaller sizing than compared to the larger sizing. So we're all betting the same hands that I was kind of predicting, or the top pair plus. We do have some checks in our top pair plus range. I was saying we could check with like ace 8, like king 8, so that if an ace or a king comes, we have those in our range. GTO actually recommends betting those, and with our top pair actually checking those with the not so high kickers, so your 10-8, jag-8, queen 8, along with your like 8-2, 8-3, 8-4 type hands. So our checks are like the weaker kicker, top pair weaker kicker. Also, it's recommending checking like aces and kings, so those over pairs. Still betting like 9s, 10s, jacks, and queens. Those are likely to be, those could be, you could say counterfeited in a way if an ace or a king comes. So we bet those, but aces and kings less likely to be counterfeited. We can afford to take a check and not worry about that turn card beating us with a one pair type hand. We're betting our flush draws, straight draws, and everything else. So it's recommending betting small. That's what we should do. And then we set up villain calling. So then on the turn, once villain checks again, now we're betting about 57%. So we go 45% up to 57, 58%. Here we're betting our flushes. We're basically betting our overpair plus. Our top pair starts to become checks. A lot of checks here. We do keep like ace 10 in our checking range, king 10 usually in our checking range, but we're kind of betting those middle, the middle kickers. Our weaker kickers we're still keeping as a check. And then to balance those hands, we're betting our flush draws, our nut, and our second nut, and some of our third nut draws at that point. The open ender, We are betting some of our open-enders, but not all of them. Open-enders kind of have some of our backup draws, so like ace, if we have an ace or a king kicker, those could pick up and become the best hand if villain has a one pair type hand that he's calling again, or a combo draw that he's calling again. An ace comes out or a king comes out, that could be top pair, that could be what we need. Whereas these middle cards, 10-9, we're checking behind, because if they miss and villain bets, we're probably going to be calling those. So GTO does recommend betting again. What about 10-9? No, if we bet large, now GTO is recommending we check the 10-9. So if we go with our sizing that we actually used, then we kind of messed up on our turn. We should be checking that. Our larger size should make villain have a tighter range. So GTO saying check behind. Now I didn't, I bet. So then he calls, and once we get to the turn, now we're betting, and here at this point we're looking at betting some of our straights and above. So our quads, our flush, and then some of our straights, and everything else is a check, because if we bet, GTO's saying villain should be really just calling with our flushes, our straights, sometimes with our set, sometimes with two pair and top pair. So at this point, since he's not always calling with these types of hands, we shouldn't be betting them for value in any way. Villain, I think GTO has him calling these hands to kind of protect against bluffs, and so forth. But let's go back and change it. If we actually bet the sizing that we needed, the smaller sizing, that kind of changes our line, because now with the smaller bet sizing, villain's going to call wider at 47%. So here it's calling 40% versus 47%. He calls. Now villain actually, or now GTO's still calling for a check here with 10-9. We have Jack 10. Let's go back. I meant that. We had Jack 10. So I don't know why I was doing 10-9, but Jack 10's a check. But with the smaller sizing, now you can see Jack 10 is mostly a bet if we have hearts. If we don't have the hearts, now it's a check. Now I think that hearts kind of goes for blocking backdoor flush draws. Flush draw didn't get there. So I'm kind of thinking this might have been more of a just kind of a balance, randomize which one. So overall, we are betting these Jack 10s more frequently than not, and it just has the hearts as being the ones that bet. So I think our bets are as appropriate in this case if we did a smaller size, and then once we get to the river, GTO saying, okay, if you bet the flop and the turn with Jack 10, you should be betting the river, because when we bet the river, now you can see villain is calling again with more of the two pair and top pair type hands. Also has those, but calling with more sets. It's almost always calling with the sets. Smaller size gave him more hands, which means there's probably more opportunity for call with hands that we beat, so we're getting more value from them. So if we go back and think about, okay, how could I have improved this hand? I think number one was the bet sizing. Pot bet sizing was off. We should have gone a third pot bet. We get called, and then we can go up to the half pot bet on the turn, and then go half pot again on the river and be okay. The larger size, I think, would argue for us to kind of slow down on the turn, which we didn't do. But the other thing is we have to think about what he showed. So he showed 9-8 two pair. And when we get to this part, he really shouldn't even have the 9-8. I didn't have that in his starting range, which kind of suggests that he has a larger range to begin with. And that's going to change things, and that's probably going to make it more likely that we bet. So if we go back to here and say, okay, well, he had 9-8. If he had 9-8 off, he probably had those, and possibly like Jack 9 as well. I'm not sure if he's playing these ace-x hands. Maybe he is. But if he's playing those, then there's more opportunity for him to have those straights, those two pair type hands, which might mean that we're going to be more likely to bet for value on the river because he's going to have more of those two pair hands to call with. But he called with two pair when there's a flush available, and we're basically 4 cards to a straight. So that means when we take our notes, which I already did, we look at that and say, oh, holy cow, he called with two pair. He called 3 streets all the way down. When he hit two pair, he still called, even though the board was really scary. Now we're going to go for extra value. I went smaller. Maybe that kind of encouraged a call. But next time we should go half pot. And if he calls half pot, then we should go larger to 2/3 or 3/4 pot. And if he calls those again, then we should go pot size bet. Try to maximize what we win. So while I won the hand, I think this hand, I still have improvement to make in this situation. I think a lot of my thought process are improving, definitely. Starting to recognize that we're not always going to bet top pair plus, that we do need to leave some of those in our checking ranges. But trying to pick out which ones should be in our checking range versus betting range, that's where we need some work. And then also our bet sizing. So hopefully you enjoy this hand. This is a little longer one because we looked through GTO, but hopefully you learned something. If you do and you like this, look tomorrow for another.